I'm Becky Garrettson. I'm the Executive Director of Eagle Forum of Alabama, and we have been really busy setting up small groups across the state to educate people on issues happening in our state and in our nation, specifically critical race theory, the Great Reset, the transgender cult, Legislature 101, where we teach you how a bill becomes a law and how to use the Alabama website to track bills and different things like that. So thank you for those of you who have attended those in different parts of the state. We have a really neat program tonight. Becca Blocker is from Coleman. Several months ago, she came to one of our small groups that was just starting in Coleman. And right before that, we met, and she became she's a graphic designer, and so she started doing graphic design work for us, and that was such a godsend. But she said she had a real interest in the Great Reset and had been doing a lot of work on that, and could she do a presentation? And so the first one we did, you did, I went with you, but to Enterprise, was that in May? April or May? Anyway, she's getting requests to go everywhere to say what she's going to say. But I just want to read you a couple of things from the website, and she will tell you everything that she is going to tell you tonight came from the World Economic Forum's website or a link from their website, so this is not conspiracy, this is really out there. The World Economic Forum has been meeting for 50 years. This is not something that just cropped up last year during COVID. But this is some of the quotes on the website itself. Because they believe that our world is just a horrible place, and to achieve a better outcome, the world must act jointly and swiftly to revamp all aspects of our societies and economies, from education to social contracts and working conditions. Every country from the United States to China must participate, and every industry from oil and gas to tech must be transformed. In short, we need a great reset to capitalism, of capitalism. The level of cooperation and ambition this implies is unprecedented, but it's not an impossible dream. In fact, one silver lining of the pandemic is that it has shown how quickly we can make radical changes to our lifestyles. Almost instantly, the crisis forced businesses and individuals to abandon practices long claimed to be essential, from frequent air travel to working in an office. Clearly, the will to build a better society does exist. We must use it to secure the great reset that we so badly need. With that, Becca, tell us what all this means.
I'm going to start off with scripture tonight. This is one of my favorite verses from Colossians about the preeminence of Christ. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He's the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth, in heaven, making peace by the blood of his cross. So I start off with scripture, because a lot of what you're going to hear today is a little bit scary. And as believers, we just keep in mind that none of this is a surprise to God. All the wildness of 2020 and 2021 and things that are coming, he foresees it all, and he's promised to be with us through it all. So how many people here have heard of the Great Reset before? If you're like me, you've heard maybe bits and pieces and kind of wondered if it might be a conspiracy theory. So myself, about a year ago, until a year ago, I was not political at all. I didn't watch the news. I couldn't have named very many local politicians. But when COVID hit, I just sat in front of my TV and I looked on Facebook and I watched the news nonstop, like probably most of you did. And while I was watching it, I started watching Trump's daily press briefings, which I'll even be honest, I wasn't a fan of Trump before all this. I heard what people said and believed things I shouldn't have. And so I was watching the one where he talked about hydroxychloroquine, and he just briefly mentioned it. He just said, it's showing promise, I hope it works. Well, the next day I saw the media go crazy. And everything they said didn't make sense. And I watched it and I was like, he didn't say that. I was watching it. He didn't say that. This is baloney. And then I saw an article from Forbes magazine where they said that a man had died after taking a hydroxychloroquine product that Trump touted. And the picture was a packet of pills. Well, as a graphic designer, you know, I was picking that apart. The headline, the man drank fish tank cleaner. There were no pills involved. You know, but the picture, they're hoping people will just read the headline and make an assumption. So that led me to think, to start to question things and to start to dig in. And so I did, and everything that came across, I looked into it. I researched it and completely switched. I mean, just my friends, all my Facebook friends are just like, what happened to you? Because now, you know, I dig into this and I just can't stop. And, you know, every day I'm like, okay, I'm not going to post about it again today. And then I read something, I'm like, I can't not share this. I have to share this. So I came across an article by a group called the Children's Defense Fund. And it's run by one of the Kennedys. And he was describing, and I think everybody here should read it, the Great Reset's plan for food. And it scared me, to be honest. And so I dug in more and I dug in more. And through the process, I'm going to kind of walk you through my research so you'll see how I came across and how I learned things. Because I know there's so much out there from all different people's opinions, 90% of this, I'm going to guess, is straight from the World Economic Forum's website. Or as I was reading something on their website, I clicked on a link that led me to another page. Other than that, I might hear something on the news, and I usually add the word World Economic Forum to whatever's happening, and I can find an article on their website about it. So what you're looking at here is their plan. By the way, they're not hiding anything. Pick one thing about this and research it, and you'll find so much. So this is their plan for the reset, the new world. And if you read, I know it's little right now, but you see there's 3D printing, there's forest, the ocean, LGBTQ, agile governance. I mean, everything that you can think of is on this. But I think one thing that's missing, which I find very interesting, is it never mentions religion. There's nothing on there about religious freedom. It talks about social justice and equity, and religion never comes up. So this man on the left is Klaus Schwab, and he's the man who came up with this. He is also the man who started the World Economic Forum. So in 2016, they put out this video, and it's 8 predictions for the year 2030. Keep in mind, this is before the pandemic. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Whatever you want, you'll rent and it will be delivered by drone. The U.S. won't be the world's leading superpower. What led them to think this is coming? But a handful of countries will dominate. You won't die waiting for an organ donor. This part's about technology. We won't transplant organs, we'll print new ones instead. You'll eat much less meat, which we're already hearing talk about this in the news. An occasional treat, not a staple, for the good of the environment. 1 billion people will be displaced. They talk a lot about refugees. It's very important. I'll come back to that. Polluters will have to pay to emit carbon dioxide. You'll also have to pay to use it. This is part of renting everything. And they want to get rid of fossil fuels. You could be preparing to go to Mars. Space is one of the things on the circle that I showed you, which right now there's a major space race going on with several different countries involved, including China. Western values will have been tested to the breaking point. This is before all the riots we've seen this year. Checks and balances that underpin our democracies must not be forgotten. Okay, so the World Economic Forum is made up of world leaders, billionaires, a lot of people that are just CEOs of large companies, and they divided into 40 futures councils. There's over 1,000 members in these councils from 80 different countries. And so for all the different things you saw on that wheel, there's a council, which, by the way, in this presentation, if it's outlined in orange, it's a link to the document where I got the information. So this links to their website where it lists all the different futures councils and who the members are. And you'll recognize names from Microsoft, from different media groups. Okay, so this part about carbon and fossil fuels. I put Pakistan on there because I just want to show you like how many people have jumped in on this energy thing, even countries that you wouldn't expect. So Saudi Arabia and Venezuela, countries like that, will always have the power because they have oil, and the world depends on oil. This organization can't take the oil away, so what they're doing is taking away the demand for oil. You'll hear a lot about electric cars and carbonless societies, carbonless cities. The future is, they talk about robotics, electric vehicles, self-driven vehicles. Will you press play on the first top left-hand corner? We were just watching TV the other day, and this commercial showed up. Yep, maybe y'all have seen it. This is the new way of delivering pizza, and they're already testing out in some cities. This little thing, there's nobody driving it. He packs the pizza in, it maneuvers its way to your house. You get there, you scan your phone or whatever method of payment it takes and get your pizza out. Okay, you can go back. In the bottom right-hand corner is another vehicle that it looks just like this one, and FedEx is using it. Look how it maps the street. I thought that was an interesting shot, too. So FedEx is doing it. You see the electric vehicles. Uber is one of the partners listed for the Great Reset. And Uber's actually a big part of this. So I would recommend following a lot of these companies on Twitter, on your social media. They're all putting it out there. They're telling you exactly what's coming. So a big one is this drone delivery, and we've been hearing about this. Everything comes to your house by drone. A lot of this is not wanting people to leave home. That you've heard a lot about digitalization and working from home. Having things delivered to you means you don't go out to the store anymore. But it also, like every small mom and pop business isn't going to be able to afford to do this drone delivery. A lot of this means it's going to come straight from the warehouse, which is the source. Amazon, for example, is the first one doing this, and they're big members of the World Economic Forum. Okay, so if you click on any one of those circles around, you get a whole new circle. And this one is moving, so it can show you how it works. All right, this is something that was new to me that I learned about doing my research, and it's one of the most important things. So the Internet of Things. They talk about everything being connected, and you'll hear it like in such a good way. The more we're connected, the more we can work together, the more data we can use to discover this, that, or the other. But when they mean everything, they mean your toaster and your car and your oven. They mean everything. So an IoT sensor is a little chip that can determine temperature, air quality, air pressure. So if you've had your temperature taken with what looks like a gun pointed to your head, that was an IoT sensor. If you've had the little thing put on your finger to get the oxygenation in your blood, that's an IoT sensor. But also, an IoT sensor can tell if by the air pressure changing, how many people are in a room, how many people entered and left a room. There's a device that you can put under your desk, and it will know if somebody took your stapler. You'll get a little message on your phone, beep, 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 the pressure on your desk has changed. But this list over here, it can tell the difference with light, humidity, weight, all 5 senses, and a lot more. Okay, and it all comes back to data. Pay attention when people say, with data, we can. You'll hear that all the time. Everything is based on what they know about you and your habits. So this, in the top left-hand corner, is a wheelchair that has IoT sensors that can tell if somebody falls out. It can tell their breathing pattern. It can tell their heart rate, their vital signs. Next to it is a refrigerator that knows that when you've run out of milk and automatically orders it for you, and it shows up by drone. That's the little cube that I was telling you about that you can go into your desk. It's also a lock. So in the commercial about it, a lady puts this on her medicine cabinet. She goes to get her medicine out, no problem. Her kid comes to get it, and it won't open because it doesn't recognize her. These are all really cool things, okay? But if it knows that that little girl wasn't the mom or didn't have access, it also knows who opened the cabinet and probably what did they take. So these glasses down here, so Apple is coming out with some Apple glasses, but so are several other companies. And there is technology in the works that when you wear these glasses, you can tell if the person's lying to you based on their pupils dilating and such. Will you click on the bottom left-hand one? Please. This is an example. This is just a commercial. I just Googled IoT, and I watched a whole bunch of different videos, and this is one I came across that gives a really good example. So here come mom and dad. They pull up to their house. The house knows it's them because they're wearing their sensors, and it opens the garage door. For anybody else, it won't open the garage door. It knows what time they came in. It knows what time they left. It knows everyone who entered and everyone who left. She had it set to preheat her oven, so it comes in. It pings off her sensor and starts the oven to whatever she set it at. She takes out this little device. It's kind of like the cube thing I showed you. There's lots of versions of this, and she scans it, and she puts it on top of the fridge. Now she knows if the fridge door is open and who opened it. No more stealing your coworker's lunch. This room locks behind him, and immediately the shower starts going to the temperature that he had it set for. It knows that the room is occupied when the lights are on and when the lights are off. Her refrigerator, she's out of eggs, and it lets her know on her cell phone. And with the click of a button, she can reorder, or she could set it to do it automatically. She can't wake up the teenager, so she cranks up the radio in his room. That's enough. I'm not going to show the whole thing. So every bit of that information is trackable. Who came in the house? How long did they stay? When did they leave? So there's a thing called a smart door. There's several different versions. One, you open with your thumbprint. Another scans your face and opens it with which faces have permission. Other ones ping off the sensor. So for some people, they can open it, some people they can't. Or you could get on your cell phone and say, the babysitter's here, open the door. But that door knows everybody who entered, everybody who left, how long they stayed. Think of the implications for that in China with the underground church. Okay, so a smart city. Feel free, when I say Google, I don't mean Google. I really mean DuckDuckGo, but it just sounds weird to say, feel free to duck this. So Google this one, smart city and the World Economic Forum. There are pages and pages and pages. One of their main companies, it's a company called Deloitte, and I read a lot of this on their website. But this is just, I put in smart city and clicked on images, and a whole bunch of pictures like this came up. So this is an example of all the ways sensors, they can be used for shopping, security. Look how that one's pointing down to a little camera that's connected to Wi-Fi. Industry, they talk a lot about changing the supply chain because, of course, COVID broke the supply chain. So that's one thing I meant to point out at the beginning. Every time that we see something weird happening in our society that is so not normal, you can bet that they're trying to tell you the old way is broken and here's why we need a new way. So all these different race riots, all of the shortages, the supply chain is broken, here's the new way. Oh, defund the police, police are bad, here's a new way of governance. It'll make, a lot of those things will make sense when you understand that. So the energy is run off this, the air quality is run off this. So this is a big part of it, is this thing called a smart streetlight. So this smart streetlight has a screen with a map that can tell you, if you need to find something. It has a hidden camera and a hidden microphone. It has the IoT sensors that can ping off your cell phone or whatever sensor you might have on your person. So it also pings off smart cars. All right, so we've all seen how the car lots are empty. And they're all empty because during COVID, they deemed semiconductors, the companies that were making semiconductors, which is a tiny little chip that is in every electrical device, they deemed those manufacturers non-essential. So now we have a shortage. So there's lots of cars already made, sitting in fields, just waiting for this little chip. So which I believe, this part is opinion. So everything, like I said before, is coming straight from the World Economic Forum's website, but if I give you my opinion, I'll tell you, and if I got it from some other source, I'll tell you that as we go. But so the smart streetlight has the camera, it has the microphone, it has the sensors that can ping off the smart car. So my belief is that they're going to replace all those sensors with these new IoT semiconductors. So these cars that are coming out, electric ones as well, they'll have this new sensor in it, which when you drive past this light, it'll ping. So that light will know every person that walked by it and every car that passed by it. So think about that car driving down the street, ping, 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 off of every street light. It knows exactly their path and where that car went. Not only that, but who was in the car. So That's a smart street light. It also, that thing in the top right-hand corner is a sensor that tells air quality. So if the air quality is bad near a school, they'll reroute traffic until it clears up. A smart traffic light could stay green longer if there's a wreck. The lights go off when nobody's around, and if somebody walks underneath it, it comes back on to save energy. And if there's a wreck, it gets brighter, it automatically calls 911. They're all really great things. Like I said, the Great Reset offers real good solutions, but they all come with a price, and that price is your data being tracked. A smart parking lot will know, so you're not driving around wasting emissions looking for a spot. It'll tell you where a spot is, and you go right to it. But it also knows where you parked. It can tell weather. It can be used for crowd control, emergency management. The other day I was driving down the street, and there was a big thing of insulation that had fallen off of somebody's truck, and I had to call the police and say, this is going to cause a wreck. In the future, that won't be a problem. The street light will tell them. Okay, so the semiconductor shortage, which I just kind of covered. So Intel is one of their partners, and they're the largest maker of semiconductors. And I just happened to come across this researching the other day saying that Intel, the largest semiconductor manufacturer, has been a major proponent of the Internet of Things, focused on connecting things to the cloud. And I would also add, this is opinion as well, that so many of these shortages, just like I said, if they're saying this is wrong, we need a new way, they're shorting out the things that they need a new way for. So their plan calls for plant-based meat, and now there's a shortage of meat. There's a shortage of chicken. Their plan calls for new green, climate-friendly building materials, and we have a shortage of wood. They want to go all-electric cars, and we have a shortage of cars. They want to go to IoT semiconductors, and we have a shortage of semiconductors. Okay, so this is where I started noticing, the more I researched, I kept coming across the word infrastructure, 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 and that was right when Biden's bill came out. And every senator across America, the Republican senator, has been putting on social media, this bill is not about infrastructure. Only 5% goes to roads and bridges. This is all about climate change. But they're wrong. And I don't think they realize it is all about infrastructure. Because to have everything delivered by drones, that's a major infrastructure change. To have all electric, there's electric roads, they have like a metal beam down the middle and it charges your car as you drive on it. That's a major infrastructure thing. These street lights are infrastructure. These smart cities are infrastructure. So I put on here a few of the things that are on there. So when it says to modernize highway, roads, and streets, what does it mean by modernize? Making them electric? You know, when it says stuff about safety, improve road safety, is that the street lights? To modernize existing transit. So they want to have less people have car ownership and more people ride public transportation and then do car sharing. So just like you would in big cities, you can rent a bicycle and you just park it at the next bicycle station. You could pick up a car at the charging station and drop it off at the next charging station. And with more people working from home, that's less people driving, less emissions in the air, better for climate change, but also the more people on public transportation, the more people get tracked because it pings you when you get on there, or maybe you have to have your QR code scanned when you get on. Manufacturing, there's a ton on their website about IoT for manufacturing and for fixing the supply chain. So there's $50 billion on here for semiconductor manufacturing, which since when is the government in business of semiconductor manufacturing? There are companies that do that like Intel, but they're putting all this money towards it. Well, this bill got held up because Republicans were fighting it, and so they passed another bill just recently, a technology bill that gave $54 billion to semiconductor. They're just going on with it. And then they just passed another that gave a 25% tax reduction to semiconductor manufacturers. So medical manufacturing, that one's coming up, but it's more IoT sensors. Okay, so down here, $20 billion for a regional innovation hub for community-led projects. What is that? Okay, so this is a bill, an Alabama bill that got passed for 5G. And so, you know, when they talk about 5G, it always goes back to the rural library that will have internet access. Like, that's all we needed. And who doesn't want faster internet? I mean, all of us do. But when you read this write-up about it, they partnered with Verizon, which is listed as one of the key partners on the World Economic Forum's website. And if you read it, it is full of Great Reset language. So right here it says that this technological breakthrough will usher in the fourth industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution is another name for the Great Reset. They call it that on the World Economic Forum's website. And then over here, it talks that it's going to be used for connected cars, smart communities, industrial IoT, immersive education, which I'm going to cover in a minute. It'll all be possible with 5G. And it's a Great Reset partner. Now, this is, I believe, a Republican senator that passed this bill. And I just wonder, like, you know, it does sound good. It sounds like things we all want and need. But I feel like the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum, is putting things out in little pieces so that you don't see how they all fit together. Like, oh, this will be good for education, we should do it. And this will be good for faster internet, we should do it. And without seeing the big picture, you don't really see what they're doing. Once you see the whole plan, then it all kind of fits together. You can spot it better and find out how it fits. Okay, once again, data, data, data. It's everything. It's all about collecting where you went and what you bought and who you're with, how long you spent there. Okay, so DuckDuckGo is a really good one to follow also. They put a lot of truth out there. So they put out that Amazon just initiated this thing called Sidewalk, which if you have an Amazon device, if you have a Ring doorbell or a Kindle Fire, you are automatically opted into this. Then basically it's connected to your neighbors, and then they're connected to their neighbors, and then they're connected to their neighbors. So say I'm just making this one up, but say your puppy had a collar with an IoT and it went missing. That's how it would track it as it went down. You could track it where it pinged, just like passing the street lights. Without knowing everything, you can see where the information is going. Also, Amazon started this Project Cooper, if I'm saying that right. They launched a satellite into space. It is one of 3,000 satellites that form a satellite constellation whose goal is to bring broadband to the whole world. They didn't just come up with this plan. They aren't building the satellites, they're launching them. So that tells you how far back this plan goes. And we didn't hear a thing about it until now. Okay, digital identity. This is also one of the topics on the Ring, and there's a council for it. So their goal is to have a digital identity where everything is in one place. So it's starting right now. You'll hear people talk about Common Pass and where we're going with the vaccine passport. So how do they know who's been vaccinated and who hasn't? Or say one country, Thailand, requires you to be vaccinated to fly, and then another country, Germany, doesn't. Like, how do we keep up at the airports? So they've come up with this thing, Common Pass, where right now it's an app on your cell phone where you can just show it and say, oh, you've been vaccinated, you're good to go to wherever. There are already 15 countries that have signed on to this. And that's a digital identity, because that same app could also hold your banking information. Or if you registered for school, what classes you signed up for, your employment status, your credit, your relationships, your purchases, your habits. Will you click the one in the bottom left-hand corner, please? We won't watch the whole video, but this is a commercial from Microsoft.
Solutions empower billions of people and millions of organizations to work, play, and achieve more. We live in a world where our digital and physical lives are closely intertwined. From the powerful devices at our disposal to the apps we use to access a rich set of experiences, we are able to interact with each other in ways that were previously unimaginable. Our identity is made up of everything we say, do, and experience in our lives. However, countless apps and services use our identity data in ways that expose us to seemingly endless breaches of our social, professional, and financial data, causing serious problems for many.
The old way is dangerous.
Not only this, but more than 1 billion displaced people
Refugees.
have no path to social and financial freedom. Our mission to empower everyone isn't complete. We need a better solution. A solution that helps put the dreams we all share within reach.
Okay, that's good.
Things like educating our children.
So sometimes I pay with PayPal, and sometimes I pay with a Cash App, and sometimes I pay with Venmo. But wouldn't it be easier if it was just all in one place? And they just always did it the same way every time. You know, would it be easier if I didn't have to go on this website and pay for my kids' lunch, and then on this side to sign them up for softball, and as far as paying for things, if it could just all be in one place? That's digital identity. So the next video coming up is the biggest eye-opener. And this is what's happening in China. I encourage everybody to go home, get on YouTube, and just put in Chinese surveillance and come up and see what you find, because it's a mind blower, and it will give you an understanding of, well, it's the next one, of how these IoT sensors will work. But this is just an example of technology. So Fast Company is one I like to follow also. They were talking the other day about Google's proprietary invention. These are things that they've applied for patents for. So this one can track family members in real time using a special microphone placed throughout a home based on the pitch of voice signatures, Google circuitry, and it will infer the gender and age information. So for example, one adult male, one female child. Why would anybody need that in their home? I know how many children I have, like why would I need that? Well, I wouldn't buy that. Okay, but what if your home came that way? Let me add that Biden's infrastructure bill has billions of dollars for housing. And retrofitting housing. That means taking old houses and modernizing them. Could it be with IoT sensors? So this man right here, this just came across my feed and I thought it was pretty interesting. He was selling drugs online and he had a fake screen name. And they tried to find him. They couldn't figure out what it was because it's encrypted and he was doing a good job of hiding. And then one day, he bought fancy cheese at the grocery store and bragged about it online. And they used this picture to get his fingerprints because his finger is showing in that picture. That's what technology can do right now. Okay, this is the video. This is right now in China. This isn't the future. This isn't coming. This is right now. And it's even worse than this. But this video just did a good job of explaining it. So we have to put up with some of these ads.
China has the largest video surveillance network in the world and plans to expand it to more than 600 million cameras over the next 2 years. With the rise in facial recognition and artificial intelligence, it feels more like someone is watching all those cameras at all times.
I'm in China, and I just got busted for jaywalking with facial recognition technology.
Stations like this one are part of a new plan by the Chinese government to publicly shame citizens caught breaking the law.
If you cross the street against the light, cameras with facial recognition technology will take a picture of your face, cross-reference it with your government ID, and then post it up there to embarrass you.
But China isn't embracing facial recognition just to catch jaywalkers. The technology is starting to appear just about anywhere you can imagine. It helps make mini recommendations at your local fast food spot. You can also pay for your food with your face.
Doesn't matter whether you smile or not, even though it's called smile to pay. Even if you are wearing a wig or have a heavy makeup, it will still recognize you.
It even curbs waste of toilet paper at public bathrooms.
My gift. This is all I get for the next 9 minutes. And then I come back again, I try to get more.
Chinese tech companies are now at the cutting edge of developing new and sophisticated ways to do video analysis.
Right now we're going into Sense Time, one of the biggest companies involved in developing that technology. Oh, that's me.
这个是我们的人脸识别的门禁，那它可以自动的识别人脸，然后方便员工进出。而你站在门口，它很快就会把门打开。那对于外来的人员来讲呢，他站在门口，门并不会打开。
So you know when someone's late?
所以我们也可以知道到底是每个人都是几点来、几点走的。所以这个呢是我们的一个肢体检测、肢体识别的一个功能。这个是我们的一个会场迎宾签到的一个系统，那它可以作为你的牌子，并不需要说每次进出都需要刷卡。
This is their digital identity.
这个是我们给线下做这种广告营销互动的一个平台，它可以很快的识别出你的魅力值，然后表情、戴了墨镜、欢乐值、年龄以及你的性别。那相应的，它会有一个这个颜值的一个排行榜，都可以在一个后台得到。Yeah, now you are the number one.
But despite all the goofy applications we were first shown, much of the tech Sense Time is developing has serious real-world implications.
这边是我们给智慧城市、平安城市打造的一整套的系统。
Could this be the
然后呢，这里
innovation
头
hub?
细节的我们可以看到很多标签，包括人的着装、上身和下身的着装，
Adult, long sleeve,
然后颜
long
色、
pants,
性
gray
别、
top,
年
gray
龄，
bottom.
然后对于车辆，我们可以识别到3000多种的车型，
And
包
artificial
括到具体
intelligence can
品牌
even guess.
那这样一个产品，
It
它
can
叫
guess
视频结构
gender,
化，
it
它
can
能够
guess
很好的
ethnicity.
把视频中的一些关键信息提取出来。比如说，我今天要找中午11点钟经过这个路口的红色车辆，然后可以很快的把这样一些目标物给检索出来。 这个是我们给这是上海外滩的一个场景。
Okay, everywhere that it's red on there is mapping people that have been there the
左上
longest.
这张图是一个
that's
原始的
good.
图片，
Thank
然后
you.
同样的。
And that doesn't even scratch the surface. So they're using it right now against part of their population called the Uyghur Muslims. So Uyghur Muslims aren't allowed to own knives. And the one that I watched, he was a butcher, so he needed a knife for his job. So they etched with a laser his QR code into this knife so that if anything were to happen, it could be tracked. Even his utensils were tracked. And they're using it like they can't go in certain doors. They're not allowed to use certain doors. They're being watched all the time. Just imagine that with the underground church in China, who's also suffering from all of this right now. Okay, so China has a tech wall, which is a censorship wall that keeps them from using certain things on the internet. It censors it for us. So when my husband and I went a couple years ago, you couldn't get on Facebook. It was illegal. So we had to download a VPN that made it look like our device was in Germany so that we could access, which a lot of the people there did have those VPNs, but they had to be really sneaky about getting it. Okay, so that particular wall was created by these PhDs with degrees in artificial intelligence. Okay, right before Trump left office, his administration sued Facebook. And it's kind of like getting Al Capone on tax evasion. They sued him for discrimination against Americans because they had certain jobs that they made available by the description to only Chinese PhDs. It was the same PhDs that built that tech wall Facebook had hired and brought them to America, and they were working for Facebook. So he sued them for discrimination, and it was right around the time that Swalwell's girlfriend came to light, and the embassy in Houston got shut down, and he had their visas changed from 5 years to 1 month and got them out. Okay, so this is this word agile, flexible. You're going to see this a lot. It's a word they add to everything. Agile education, agile supply chain, and so. This is, for agile governance, the old way is broken, as we can clearly see by how bad things are going in America. So the new way is called self-regulation, social governance. And they say that it's a crowdsourced policy. But we've already seen how the media can affect policy and how they can affect people's opinions. So the idea, and they want to start with businesses. So if you're a business sell building materials, you might belong to an organization of building material sellers, and you would crowdsource your policy. Like you'd all get together and say, we are going to recycle. And so you come up with a policy for it. And so if one of the businesses was caught burning wood behind their shop, then they would come to them and say, hey, you're guilty of this, fix it. And if they don't, then it goes from, that's the self-regulation. Then it goes to co-regulation, which the higher you go, it always ends up at the government. And so they give them basically a social score saying if you're allowed to be in our organization or you're not, or you're allowed to use these services or you're not. And in China, they have the same thing called social credit. So if you jaywalked, your score just went down. If you walked to work instead of drove, your score just went up. Okay, but what I haven't come across are what is the consequences of that? So could they say, oh, your score fell below 80, you're no longer allowed to use public transportation? You're not allowed to use the library? I don't know. These are just things that could happen. Okay, so blockchain. I took this one out and then I put it back in. It's hard to understand, but it's really, really important. So if you've been following Bitcoin and digital currency, what makes it so special is that it's not government regulated. So right now the dollar is centralized, which means the government can print more or they can burn it. They can manipulate the value of the dollar, whereas when it comes to Bitcoin, there's a public registry. So if somebody mined a Bitcoin, it would make a block of data saying this Bitcoin has been mined. And if they sold it, if they gave it to somebody for a pizza, well, that would be the next block. And if that pizza company took it and invested it, that would be the next block. Okay, so that's the blockchain, which means you can trace everything back to its source. So to make everything trackable, there's so much talk now about putting this on the blockchain, putting this on the blockchain. So for example, the supply chain, they give an example of food. Say there was a listeria outbreak in Bluebell. Instead of shutting all the Bluebell ice cream down, they could use a blockchain to figure out where the ingredients come from and just shut down that one manufacturer instead of the whole businesses. It's a good thing. You could blockchain your salmon at your restaurant. Did this come from Louisiana or was it frozen in China? So the public registries. So this is just my opinion. There's a gun bill out right now that part of it calls for a public registry of guns, which means you would have to register how many guns you have, what kind of guns you have, and where you keep them in your house. And that would be on blockchain. So if you gave that gun away or if you sold that gun, that would be the next block of data. But it's public, which means nobody can change it, nobody can manipulate it, just like with currency, which is why that's decentralized. It's not controlled by anybody. But because it's public, I could look up if the single mom had a gun or not. A criminal could look up and find out who had a gun. Or if you're out of town, where do you keep your guns? The government can say, well, this one's not here because it's all in this public registry. Common Pass is on this. Everything that's blue, there's a link to an article about it. Your ancestry could be on it, adoption papers or whatever. Somebody's already gotten married on blockchain, which I don't really even understand what that means. Automation, so that goes back to the Iot sensors. If you had an Iot sensor in your house and it said that you were developing mold, automation using blockchain would alert your insurance company before you even knew about it and file a report. Your fuel usage. Okay, it talked a lot about charging people for carbon. They're saying this is the new tax instead of income tax, to charge people for the carbon they use. So if you, and basically you're renting everything, you're also going to be renting carbon. You pay for the carbon you use, and that'll be on blockchain. There's a thing already called bit walking. If you walk to work instead of drive, for every so many miles that you walk, you get $5 shows up in your account. It is tamper-proof for record keeping. It's supposed to cut down on corruption. But as you see, with every good thing comes a cost. I read an article the other day about electronic voting. That links to an article. The first blockchain vote happened in the last election. They tested it out. I think it was Ohio. I'll have to click on it to be sure. But if they can track your voting, well, sure, that'll be good for fraud, but it also shows who you voted for. I don't know exactly how that works. This is the article about food. Okay, so I kept thinking, why do they care about refugees so much? Why is this such a big part of the plan? And then I prayed about it, and I asked God to show me, and I was digging around, and I came across this video. Their Facebook page is full of short little videos like this, by the way. So this refugee camp is already on blockchain. They look into a camera, and it's based off their retina. That's their thumbprint. Just like in China, they were paying with their face and getting toilet paper with their face, and as weird as that sounds to say, in these refugees communities, they're doing it with their eyes. Both of those are called biometric data. If it's based on something off your body, like a thumbprint or DNA. Okay, so basically, refugees leave their home, they have no money, they don't have their passport. A lot of times the government confiscated it. Maybe they just gave all their cash to a smuggler to get them to the next place. They show up in another country with nothing. They can't even prove who they are. They can't prove that they're a good guy, not a bad guy. They're desperate, and they don't have access to their bank accounts. They need food. So they show up at these refugee camps, and the World Food Program gives them a debit card to buy food with. Well, that debit card has bank fees and plastic that's bad for the environment. So instead, they put them on the blockchain, scan their eyes. That's an ID that you can't lose, which has to feel good to someone who's lost everything. And so now, instead of showing up in another country and not being able to get a job because you don't have an ID and not being able to get a house, all of a sudden they have an ID they can't lose, okay? But refugees, and when I started thinking about this and putting it together, there are 1 billion refugees in the world. So say they gave every one of them $100 to go shopping with. Well, that's $100 billion. So you know that companies are going to want a piece of this. Okay, this part is just me thinking about it. You know the company that Walmart or whoever in their local area is going to want some of that money that they're spending. And so if they get on that, well, then they're going to pass that technology on to their customers as well. So what if I think they start with refugees because that's the largest vulnerable people group. But what if they said, here's how we're doing food stamps from now on. You want food stamps? This is how you have to get it. You want public housing? which is coming, and this is how you have to get it. You want to register your kids for school? Like, what if it went that far? This would be our digital identity. Okay, so here's some stores that are already using biometric data. Amazon has the stores, there's 6 of them in the US, 1 in Canada, they're called Grab and Go. All of these are commercials that you can watch. You walk in, you take what you want off the shelf, and you leave, and it automatically charges your account. But it also tracks what you picked up and put back, and what aisles you spent time on, and those, I'm sure, are going to be the ads that show up next. They bought Whole Foods, Amazon did, and the one in Seattle, you pay with your hand. It's called an Amazon Palm Scanner. That's their biometric data. It's their retina scanner type thing. That's a cart on the right-hand side. You put your phone in the little pocket when you get there. It pulls up your shopping list from Alexa. It weighs the items and scans them when you put it in the bag, and then you just leave with it. The Visa and MasterCard both have chips that work off your thumbprint, already available. So the European Union has already introduced a blockchain digital wallet for people's money. And the Fed here in the US is working on a digital currency. Healthcare. During COVID, a lot of people did this telemedicine, where you meet with your doctor online, you discuss your problem, and then they give you a diagnosis. Well, there's also, they're doing robotic doctors. This is how they're training, they're using virtual reality to train med school students. I'm not going to click on this because of time, but this is a real commercial I found. I just Googled Iot Sensors in healthcare, and I came across this real commercial for a company where you don't want to go to the doctor. They'll send you this box of sensors. It even says sensors on, IoT sensors on the box. And you get it out, you pull your doctor up on your laptop, and he says, take your temperature, put your blood pressure cuff on, and immediately it sends him, using the cloud, all that data. And he'll say, oh, you've got a fever and your blood pressure is low. I'm going to call you in a prescription for whatever. Well, so then that prescription can show up at your house with this drone, and they have a bottle that will they're working on a bottle that will just dispense your 3 o'clock pill. And, you know, that way, the idea is to cut back on drug addiction, but it's also control. Okay, so these are some things that are coming out in the future, and I found a National Geographic from last year about the future of medicine, and most of these devices I read about in this magazine. So the first group are already out. These are things you can already do. There's an app that can detect colon cancer, but if you just take a selfie of your eyes. There's a phone that can track the change in your gait and give an early diagnosis for Parkinson's. They tested with AI a bunch of lung x-rays, and the AI beat human doctors at a higher percentage because of the data. There's a chip that can go under your skin so that you don't have to give blood anymore. It will just say, oh, your white blood count is high, you might have an infection, and it'll send a message to your doctor. Okay, so down at the bottom, these are future technologies in work. A senator tweeted this one out the other day. That toilet, it analyzes your urine. I think it was developed by MIT, but I could be wrong. It also, just like you can recognize somebody from their eye or their handprint, it can also recognize you. I know that's just terrible, but he was making fun of it. That's why he said it's flushing your dollars away. There's a sensor, they're working on sensors and pillows that can monitor brain waves, smartphones that look for signs of depression, cars that detect drowsiness. I heard on the way here, I was listening to a video about all of these devices, and one of them was talking about using AI with construction vehicles, where if you're not wearing your safety glasses and your hard hat, the vehicle won't start. They talk a lot about social housing, which is basically it just means houses that are owned by the government. And there's a lot of money in that infrastructure bill for housing. There's several different things that I read about it, but I keep coming back to this plan where it says it's not about individual houses as much as think about your neighborhood. So you live in a neighborhood with other people, hopefully where they want your job to be no less than 10 minutes away. Statistics are coming out that they're putting out that say 70% of people will live in cities by the year 2030, which of course we know makes them easier to track because they're using public transportation and shopping in the grocery stores and all those different things that have sensors. I'm trying to talk fast to get it all in. I hope you can understand me. So one of the recommendations they made was about communal living. They don't all of their things start off like this. COVID has shown us that this is broken and this is what we need. So because so many people pass away in nursing homes, they want to get rid of nursing homes and hospitals, and you do all this from home like I showed you. But the new plan, instead of nursing homes, is communal living, where you have a shared living room, and then off of that are different little apartments, and they are pushing the idea of them being multi-generational, everybody looking out for each other, which I think sounds so nice. But they also talked about in these housings having fall sensors. So if you fell down, it would alert 911. But if that sensor can track if you fell, it can track all your motions. And so as they're building these new houses, I wonder how many will have IoT sensors built in. A lot of them, you know, we talked about a lot, there's a shortage of concrete, there's a shortage of wood, but they have all these new technologies like 3D printed houses. I wonder how many, you have the prefab walls made out of this new material, and I wonder how many of those will have these IoT sensors built in. It also talks about retrofitting, taking an old house and turning it into a smart home. So you see on the right, this is something that everybody should have. How to ensure that connected homes are for everyone. How to make it equitable. These are all, you see the logo at the top, these are all articles straight from their own website. Okay, this one is a shocker, I think. So you'll hear this line over and over. Training children for jobs that don't exist yet. You'll hear training adults for jobs that don't exist yet. And you'll hear about people are living longer so they can work longer. So this is called personalized adaptive learning using AI. So a lot of it has to go back training children to use, not training children, training people, workers, to run these IoT devices. To be able to know how these devices work. And I don't know if other parents, your social media is like this, but I get ads every day for teaching your kids coding. Sign your kid up for coding. And if you go to the bookstore, it's full of kids coding books. So Agile Education is personalized adaptive learning using AI. So basically, your kid, if they're doing well in math, they're taking classes online in a room with teachers and other students, but their curriculum might differ. So if he's doing good at math, his curriculum is going to steer him this way. If she's doing good at English, her curriculum is going to steer this way based on her testing. So basically, the government is choosing your job based on test scores, or how could they manipulate that to put everybody in IoT jobs? You know, you just don't know. It's not different than what Russia did when they said you're going to be a baker and you're going to be a builder. Okay, this video right here.
红色是表示你的专注力显示的
See the light on his forehead is red. That means he's deeply focused.
蓝色是走神了
know exactly when someone isn't paying attention.
白色就是你可能跟网络还没有连接好
These headbands measure each student's level of concentration. The information is then directly sent to the teacher's computer and to parents.
Okay, that's good.
China?
That headset was developed in America at Massachusetts. Okay, I'm going to have to go through the last part really fast. So there's so much to this. I'm giving you a tiny overview of a whole bunch of different topics. This is a smart farm. The IoT sensors say the soil is dry, and out pops the watering. It says that it's too acidic, and out pops the fertilizer. But in order to have smart farms, you have to have 5G everywhere. It's almost their excuse to bring it into rural areas. Okay, meat. You've heard a lot about plant-based meat. Chuck Schumer the other day tweeted out that he was enjoying his plant-based beer. Has anyone ever heard of beer with meat in it? All beers, but that's the new buzzword because they're trying to tell us that plant-based is better. Okay, so they're calling for, they want to get rid of 90% of the meat industry, leaving only 10%. But who controls that? The rest of it is 3D printed or plant-based, which means you can't make it yourself. You can't grow it yourself. You have to go back to the source. Their plan for food is GMO. So if you grew a GMO, genetically modified organism, if you grew a GMO tomato and you planted the seed, you grew the tomato, and you saved the seed and planted it again, it will not grow. You always have to go back to the source to get more seeds. A lot of people are saying that they're trying to monopolize the global food supply. But look, they even made GMO breast milk. You have to depend on them for, it's a cow that when you milk it, it makes human milk. So you've seen where Bill Gates has bought up all this farmland and he's become the #1 owner. I read an article the other day that said if he were to ban grazing on his land, that would single-handedly make the price of meat go so high the average person couldn't afford it. So all of this, Prime Now has already started delivering groceries, and the future is to do it by drones, which once again makes you go back to the source. You don't get in your car and create emissions and go to the local grocery store. You just do it on your phone and it shows up at your house. But once again, you have to go back to the source. And of course, it's all trackable. So all the meat companies that are making the plant-based meat, they're owned by Gates and Bezos. I've got them all listed there. Okay, this is a shocker, but they're to replace the protein you would get from meat. They want us to eat insects because it's a very easily renewable resource where it takes a lot of farmland to feed a cow, and they make methane gas, which is bad for the environment. They can do this with bugs and it not have such a toll on the environment. So the European Union already approved mealworms for human consumption. They're drying them out and making flour out of them. I don't know if y'all have been seeing all this stuff about cicadas. Cicadas go into the ground for 17 years and then they come out. They're very predictable. So scientists knew 17 years ago that this would be the year they would come out. Google cicada tacos and see how much pops up. It's a lot. All the local news stations are like, oh, I'm going to try the cicada taco. Watch me. It's better than I thought it was. They're all pushing it. Okay, so housing. So there's a company called BlackRock that is buying up all the houses. So first, Biden did a moratorium on rent, which put without any protections for landlords. So landlords couldn't kick people out, but they couldn't pay the bill, so they had to sell the home. BlackRock is the company that's buying up all these homes. So right now, they're buying at 20% higher than the asking price. So regular people like us can't compete with them, and there's hardly anything left. So now there's a housing shortage, and when you do buy it, you're going to pay a lot more than you thought. Well, it just so happens that the CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink, is on the board of the World Economic Forum. Several former Obama appointees, after leaving office, now work for BlackRock, and several people that worked for BlackRock, Biden has just appointed to offices. And some of those offices don't make sense, like it's not their area of expertise. So this article in the bottom right-hand corner, I'm just going to read it out loud. The National Economic Council Director, Brian Deese, he's one of those people that was hired by Biden. He's also tied to this Proterra company. They make electric buses, which I've just explained to you is the future of electric vehicles. He worked as the global head of sustainable investing before he joined it. Also, BlackRock is connected to this company. They've invested $415 million into this merger. They're all working together. That's the point of this. So I forgot to mention, BlackRock is backed by the Federal Reserve. So they're using our tax dollars to outbid us on houses. The World Economic Forum talks a lot about this partnerships between corporations and the government. Who's behind the Great Reset? Really fast. All the world leaders. Not all of them, but a majority of them. So Trudeau from Canada, he came out and said we need a Great Reset. Prince Charles did. Bill Gates. In 2020, Trump gave a speech at the Great Reset in January. At the World Economic Forum. Every year they go to this forum. It's in Davos, Switzerland, and they meet and they talk about economics. Well, he got on the stage and he said, minorities have more housing than, more home ownership than ever. They're doing better financially than ever. There's more women in the workforce than ever. Our emissions are down 30%. My America First is working great. You should all go do it in your own countries. Well, that means there's no problem, so we don't need a reset, right? Everything's good. That was January. February is when COVID hit. Okay, George Soros has spoken there before. Okay, this is just me thinking. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, all this wildness that they've been doing lately. To me, it's the same thing. What we're seeing in America, our law enforcement is broken, we need a new way. The royalty, the royal family, that's broken, and we need a new way. Our old way of governance is broken, and we need a new way. Well, I didn't put it two and two together until I saw that they had partnered with Procter & Gamble. Their partnership is actually with Lever, and I thought, what did Meghan Markle have to do with soap? Well, so I just looked up Lever, Procter & Gamble. I Googled that and the word World Economic Forum, and sure enough, they're a partner. They're also involved with Verizon on an education initiative. So what do Verizon and Procter & Gamble have to do with education? Okay, Build Back Better. We've heard that over and over and over. Biden's slogan for his election, Build Back Better. But look, who else said it? England, Canada, the EU, India, Australia, Latin America, and Biden. Where did he get that? It's the original slogan for the Great Reset, Build Back Better. You can tell who's pushing it if you just put them in with the slogan, and you'll know that they're on board. Okay, the nation state. This is one of their predictions that it didn't make the top 8, but they say the old way is gone, the new way of being a nation. Identifying yourself as an American or an Alabamian or a Southerner. Those ways are gone. And it says other loyalties are taking those places, are more important, are different identities, your religion, your ethnicity, which you hear that a lot. They're trying to make people identify, are you a Democrat? Are you a liberal? What is your race? Pick these identities because it's not your country. They're trying to blur the lines of borders on nations, which makes the border crisis make a lot more sense. We see all these people spilling in. If you look at Spain, they're having the same crisis we are with their border. And then we've got the refugee crisis. We see this mingling of all different nations more towards a one world government, less towards separate identities. If we all get on common paths, that's something the whole world is doing. If we all blur these lines, if we all use the same digital currency, we become one instead of separate nations. So I went to if you go to the World Economic Forum's website and scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's a thing that says our partners. I just listed the ones I was familiar with. There's ones from all different countries, the UAE Bank and different things like that. But these are ones that I knew. Okay, so all of the vaccines are up here. We've heard a lot about the Mayo Clinic lately. It's up there. Gucci. Have you seen Gucci's new men's line? Google Gucci men's line for 2021. It's all Little House on the Prairie dresses for women on men, which I think part of this feminization of men goes back down to the breakdown of the family. I just read a really great book called Live Not by Lies, and he's interviewing people that experienced communism and comparing it to what we're seeing now. So people from Russia or different countries are saying, this is what happened in our country, and it looks a lot like this. And he made a big deal about the family and how the family is the last line of resistance. So we see this breaking up of the loyalty of families. And even with this communal housing, okay, you probably aren't going to go KGB on a family member and turn them in for doing something the government doesn't like. But if you just lived with a handful of neighbors and that person didn't recycle, I mean, they're training us for this now, like, look who didn't wear a mask, or look who said something I think is racist, or whatever. People are more likely to turn each other in. Those loyalties are broken down. One that I thought was interesting, it was Mozilla Firefox, because they're supposed to be known for Mozilla Firefox. It's a web browser that's, their whole thing is that they don't track you. But you can go and look on any of on the World Economic Forum and see who's involved. So when I did this, I started following some of these people. Like I said, they're not hiding it. They're all putting it out there. AARP, they talk about the housing all the time and the medicine, the medical changes. Walmart's a big part of it, but look who got to stay open when everybody else closed down. Lego has a whole education system they're working on. People that we trusted. Okay, this is an article from Fortune about flexible pricing. Flexible pricing, you shouldn't have to pay for stuff you don't use. You should just pay for the things you did use. Okay, that sounds good, right? Nobody wants to pay more. But what they're talking about is you renting everything. So if you only used this much electricity or this much carbon, or instead of owning a car, you just pay for the times that you use it. You don't pay for it sitting in your driveway. You rent it. We're going to see a lot about it. But it sounds so nice when they call it flexible pricing, but it's basically you not owning stuff, you renting it. Okay, we're almost done, you guys. So this is, I went to Verizon's website and looked at what they had to say. This is a map of all the places where they already have smart streetlights, the ones that I showed you earlier. Like Kansas City, they have smart parking, smart traffic, smart lighting, and then they give you case studies. So for everything I've told you today, on the World Economic Forum's website, they'll give you 10 or 20 case studies. Here's the new way to do education. Here's a school where they're doing it. Indiana and Louisiana both have smart farms. This is not something they're planning for the future. This has been going on for quite a long time. So how do you recognize the Great Reset? Look for these words. They tack the word agenda onto a whole bunch of things. Climate change agenda, global agenda, the new education agenda. They use the word stakeholder all the time. And the idea is that it's no longer about the shareholder who has something to gain, but the stakeholder, the person who's using it. How will it affect society? They add re to a bunch of things. Rethink, reimagine, renew, restore. The word agile, agile education, agile farming, circular economy, circular community. They call this the new capitalism because old capitalism is broken, which we've heard that in the news a lot lately. The new normal. And then because it's the fourth industrial revolution, they tack 4.0 onto everything. Manufacturing 4.0, supply chain 4.0. And they all tend to use this circular chart. I just keep seeing that popping up a lot. Now that you see this, like I'm telling you, you'll start to see it everywhere. Okay, so this is to tell you, like people always ask me, how do we fight this? Okay, look how much the meat market was worth 2 years ago. $1,000 billion. My husband says I should have wrote $1 trillion, but I just wrote exactly how I read it. Pharmaceuticals, like these are people who have something to gain and something to lose. Okay, see how a handful of them are in parentheses? So I just went on Google and I put, how much is the pharmaceutical industry worth? And I got the number. But for some reason, when I got to 3D printing, drones, IoT, AI, robotics, GMO, all those things I told you about, it didn't just tell me what it's worth now, it told me what it's gonna be worth in the next handful of years. Well, how do they know that? All of this money behind it, they're not just gonna walk away, okay? This is what's invested. That's why I think instead of fighting it, like we're in the time of preparing for it, preparing for what's coming. I found this online the other day and I thought this was a really cool thing. That circle represents how many of Earths would fit into the sun. It's 1.3 billion. So all of man's plans, all of this great world reset, these giant changes that are going to change everything, and these men with all their trillions of dollars are that tiny little blue dot right there. To God, you know what I'm saying? It's nothing. The sun isn't even the biggest thing in space. To God, it's a speck. And this, like I said in the beginning, this is not a surprise to him. When I give this talk, I always end up with like deer in headlights looks. People are kind of afraid about what's coming. There's a scary feeling that comes along with it. But as believers, we need to remember what the Bible says about him. Am I a God at hand, declares the Lord, and not a God who's far away? Can man hide himself in secret places? Can Bezos, can world leaders, where I cannot see him, declares the Lord? Do I not fill the heavens and the earth? That's the Son, okay? And God fills the heavens and the earth, declares the Lord. He is mighty to save. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. So what's coming? What's coming for you individually? I was telling my friends the other day, you know, we get scared about losing our things, and like we want to hold on to our things so tightly, and my possessions and my security and my safety, all the things God has, we put in God's hands. So if you work for the CIA and you were an agent and they said, we want to send you to Wall Street to spy on millionaires and get the dirt about what's going on, and you did it. And then next week he's like, okay, we're going to send you into the slums this week. We want you to get the dirt on drug lords. You'd be like, the slums? But I thought I was your Wall Street guy. Am I getting demoted? Did I do something wrong? Like, no CIA agent would do that. They would be like, all right, let's do it. You know, and as Christians, we're on mission for God. And our mission is to reach souls for him. Our mission is to glorify him. So what does it matter if he has us do it in our safe little neighborhood or in a homeless shelter? Are we not still God's agent? Do we not still work for him? And if that's where he strategically put us, then he's there with us as well, and we don't have to worry about it. I listen to a pastor a lot who points out that in the Bible, there's all these different times where God takes his hands off people. So in the book of Judges, they wanted to do things their own way, and he kept saying, do it this way, and then finally he said, okay, do it your own way, see how it goes. And of course it bombed. It was terrible. So like, what if in America right now, we're at the position where he's letting us have our own way? When I say us, you know, I just mean abortion and money and all these things that people say, this is the way we want to do it. This is the way, we want to do it this way. And God says, okay, do it. But at the end of those stories, when the people of Judges fall flat on their face, they see that their way wasn't right. They see that God's way was, and they come back to him. So what if right now we are in a position where instead of seeing everything fall apart, we are about to witness a great awakening? What if God is about to show us we can't do it on our own, that we need him? The Bible does say there will be a great awakening. So in all of this, there isn't anything to be afraid of. As much as it seems, it's just a change in our mission. It might even be a change in our position. But we are still on mission for God, and we're still his children, so we don't have to be afraid. Okay, Q&A. Thank you.
You were talking about a sensor and the overhead lighting in a road,
Mm-hmm.
and you were saying that if they would know who was driving the car and they would know who was in it, how would they know who was in it?
Okay, so that just depends. If it's say your digital ID is your phone. You know, and so right now in that Amazon store, you scan your phone when you come in and then you shop. Okay, so what if that had everything else? What if that had your taxes and your school registration? Because that's what the Microsoft commercial said. All of your identity on one place to make life easier. So what if your QR code could ping off of it? Okay, so what if you have that sensor in your smartphone that they have in their light? That's one way. Okay, but just like Kentucky Fried Chicken knew who she was when it scanned her face, and just like the Chinese Innovation Hub, or I don't know what they call it, they knew who was walking down the street. They knew who jaywalked. You know, what if it works that way? So there's so many different ways they could go. I mean, they could go with the chip. They could go with the thumbprint. They could go with facial recognition. They could go with the QR code. China does several of those. I mean, everybody in some areas has a QR code. You can watch a video about the Uyghur Muslims, but then those people just got their face scanned, and then the refugees had their eyes scanned. So I don't know how it'll do it, but these are all examples. Most of those examples I found from the World Economic Forum. That one about China, I just Googled China surveillance and found it.
Okay, Melanie.
So they're already doing stuff like this with the red light cameras. I mean, I don't know how many has gotten a red light ticket. I got a picture of my daughter going through and, busted her. So then they're also doing stuff like this via all kinds of different ways through Ring cameras and things like that. So my question is this. I mean, if we don't want that in our houses and stuff like that, do we just resist it? Is it something that we can shut off, or what do you suggest?
How do you opt out?
As a Christian, I think there will be a way to opt out. I think that there will be a choice. This is conjecture on my part, but what if they said, you're not allowed to go to church because of COVID, and if you want to shop, then you have to use this device, but signing up for this device means that they can now track that you went to church, and so you're having to make a choice. I don't know. I don't know which way they're going to go. All I can tell you is, here's the plan that they're putting out there, and a lot of it they're not putting out there. But like I said, as a Christian, I believe we'll have something to look for, kind of like the mark of the beast or something like that, because the Bible says without it, there'll be no buying and selling of goods. So I'm just guessing that that's what we're talking about.
I like to grow my own vegetables and stuff. And you was talking about the GMO, the seeds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can you, I guess, keep your own seeds and year after year and grow your own?
I've been buying heirloom seeds. So heirloom seeds are just like they were when God made them. They haven't been spliced with something or hybrid with something. They're original. And you can buy those. Yeah, you can buy them at Lowe's. You can buy them at a bunch of different places. So I bought some, but I also took a class. I planted a garden this year, and I took a class to learn how to save seeds for different things and to do it right. I took a medicinal herbs class. I'm just using this time to kind of learn things, and that's what several of our groups are doing. They're doing community gardens. They're working together just to be prepared for some of that, raising chickens. So I think, people say, well, what can we do? How do we fight it? And I do think one way to fight it is buy local. I feel like they're purposely putting small businesses under with their policies about who's essential and who isn't. And so now more than ever, forget Amazon, forget Walmart, and buy it from someone who's got a small business that they're working on. Let's help each other out. Let's help our neighbors out. Let's grow things and share them. Plant a bunch of blueberries and share it with your neighbors, or build a lot of these groups that we're doing with Equal Forum about building community. One of our groups, they have people in their community that are nurses and people in their community that are farmers that know how to do different things. There's a tech guy who knows how to make broken things work. So I think a lot of that is a good thing with showing up and talking with each other and seeing what we have to offer each other and how we can help each other out. And I also think one of my favorite verses is James 1:5. Let anyone who lacks wisdom ask God, who gives it freely without finding fault. That means you don't have to be good enough. You don't have to have it all right. You don't even have to be a Christian. You just have to ask God for it. And if you go to the book of Job, there's a chapter in Job 28 where it's like, where can wisdom be found? Is it in the skies? Is it in the mines? Is it at the bottom of the ocean? At the end of that, Job 28:28, I believe he says, wisdom is this. What is wisdom? Wisdom is the knowledge of the Lord, and understanding is obedience. Okay, so when you pray for wisdom, you get the knowledge of the Lord. So sometimes I just pray it in general. Lord, give me wisdom. Sometimes I'll be like, I don't know what this is all about. Lord, give me wisdom about this. Help me to see the connection. But with all that's coming, I just think it's such a crucial verse in the Bible for each one of us to be praying for God to show us, and then to tag obedience along with it. When we hear about critical race theory, judge it by the Bible. Is this biblical? Like, if they're trying to tell me that one group will always be racist against another, but the Bible says we're supposed to have community, we're supposed to be brothers in Christ, brothers and sisters in Christ. In him there's no Jew, no Gentile, no male, no female. Well, then that means critical race theory is not biblical. And so everything, some of this stuff sounds good, it really does, but when you run it through the lens of the Bible, you see it's flawed. I think being close to Christ is the most important thing right now. Spend time in the Bible, spend time praying, and ask him for wisdom.
Amen. That's a great way to end that. You can stay up here with me. Okay.